Okay, so in this video, I want to talk a little bit about being a citizen of the United States as shown in the Constitution. So I'm going to pose this um, proposition, I guess, in the form of questions. So if we're all citizens of the United States, that would mean that the federal government has unilateral power over every person in America. So what would be the purpose of having the United States where everyone's a citizen of it and the United States of America? Because clearly it wasn't intended that way in the beginning. Once you understand this part, it makes understanding territorial jurisdiction a lot easier, I think. So in the Constitution, we see in the preamble that we, the people of the United States, work to do some things for the United States of America. And I showed you in a previous video how the independence belongs to the United States of America, not the United States. So what would you rather be a citizen of? The free place or the states, or a place where you have to sign a contract to get into it? So I also showed you that commissioned officers and enlisted people in the military have to sign a contract dedicating so many years of service. So if you're free, you belong to the independent place, the United States of America, which is any one of the states. But once you sign a contract, you go into service to the United States and you're under obligation. If you have no contract, you're not under obligation, and a contract requires you to agree. An explicit contract does anyway. It requires you to sign something. So if you were all citizens of the United States automatically at birth, then why do they require us to sign something? They could just say, look, you're being drafted and this is a communist country or a socialist country and we can do with you what we want, and you're going to enlist for a number of years. We're going to keep you until the war's over or whatever. And there's no signature required because we can use force against you because of our system of government. But America is supposed to be a republic with free, sovereign, and independent states, and all rights, jurisdictions, and powers not given to the United States. So if that's true, how are we also subject to the jurisdiction of a place that we're not in service to and not in that place at the same time? So why is it that the president is two people or has two positions? One is the executive officer of the United States of America and the commander-in-chief of the United States Land and Naval Forces. And why is it that the militia is in the actual service of the United States once it's called? Why aren't they in the actual service of the United States all the time? And I'm talking about the way the Constitution says it, not the way they want you to believe it now. So if you are at birth a citizen of the United States, why at the age of 18 do they need all males to sign a selective service card? Because they need you to volunteer. But why would they need you to volunteer if you're already a citizen? They could just automatically draft you. Maybe it's because you're not a citizen of the United States. You're a citizen perhaps of the state. And if you join the state militia, you're still not a citizen of the United States unless you're called into actual service of the United States. So what would you be? You would be a citizen of the state. So being a citizen of the state, you're not under federal laws, and so you're not required or obligated to sign anything because contracts are all by nature voluntary. If contracts are voluntary, how do they get you to sign? Well, there's a difference between a contract and an advertisement. An advertisement could be considered propaganda, where they tell you, you have to do this, like you have to sign the selective service card at the age of 18. But if they have the right to draft you because you're a citizen of the United States at birth, then why do they need you to sign a selective service card? They could just draft you. They could just take you. But that's because we live in a country where the United States laws apply to the people who voluntarily sign a contract and enlist or become a commissioned officer of the land and naval forces of the United States. And the militia is citizens of the states and the state military. And why is it then that the Constitution says that the militia can be called into service of the United States if you're already a member of the United States? So joining the militia does not make you a citizen of the United States and doesn't make you a person who's in the national military, because you haven't signed that contract either. Then you must be something else. You must be a citizen of the state, not required to do anything federal. But if you're in the militia and the militia is called into actual service of the United States, then you would go and become a person bound to follow orders, as long as they're constitutional and lawful, of the commander-in-chief or whatever high-ranking officer or ranking officer you're placed under. So why are there so many distinctions in the Constitution that tell us that we're not citizens of the United States, yet they continuously tell us that we are? And that's because, the reason why is because if they don't advertise to you and tell you you have to, then you wouldn't do it. You wouldn't believe it. So they propagandize to us to make us believe that we are something that we are not, to get us to do something that we don't have to do, so that they can do things that otherwise we wouldn't want them to do and that they would have no power to do. So the government is allowed to advertise. They're allowed to advertise to us. Militaries are allowed to perform deceptive practices. There's an entire book written on that by the military. These deceptive practices are sometimes in the form of advertisements, which they tell us everybody has to pay their taxes, and then they turn around and say that taxes are voluntary. Everyone has to sign a selective service card, but signing something makes for a contract, and contracts are all by nature voluntary. They give you a ticket and you say it's not an admission of guilt. They say it's not an admission of guilt. It's just saying that you saw the ticket. Well, that's propaganda. That's an advertisement. They're lying to you to get you to sign, because signing it makes for a contract, and contract makes for a positive authority. So if they don't have the constitutional authority to do something, they advertise to us, they get us to sign a contract, they say it was voluntary, and then your signature makes it positive for something that would otherwise not be positive. If you've watched my other videos, you'll notice that I talk about positive law and non-positive law a lot, and there are things that are positive law, titles that are positive law, that allow the federal government to do certain things and allows for there to be a relationship between the federal government and the states. The states made it positive when they joined the Confederacy, but for all the titles not given a positive law citation, they require you to sign something, because your signature makes for a contract, and the contract makes it positive for you, makes it a positive law for you. If you don't sign it, it's not a positive law. In some instances, though, of course, we always know there's a but somewhere in there. Some contracts are made by an action on your part. So you have explicit contracts where it's written and you sign it, and there's implicit contracts where you act it. So if somebody tells you you need to do that, and you know you don't have to do it, but you do it anyway, that's an implicit contract. So you've done it by your actions. You've made a contract by your actions. So if your action is to sign a card, you've made your action explicit by signing the card. And for anything that doesn't have a positive law citation, which means it's not according to the Constitution, it requires you to sign something or act something. Okay, so again, being a citizen of the United States is not something that's automatic. It's sort of propaganda through advertisements and through the education system and various other ways, being, hearing it over and over and over again. And like Anthony Amsterdam and Jerome Bruner, Minding the Law, say in the video I'm getting ready to post, is that they take these words, they put them in a new context, they use them over and over and over again, or phrases, they use them over and over and over again in this new context, so that when they feed it back to you, you think that it means the thing that they want you to mean instead of the thing that it really means. And it's all just games. It's all just deception. It's a war for your mind. And we've heard that in other places. And hopefully this kind of clarifies some things for you. We're not citizens of the United States unless we're in a contract or have volunteered to be in the national military.